and then. Okay, perfect. Well, good evening, everybody. Thanks for being here. Uh, I am Whitney, for those who don't know me. I am a Your Worth coach here, a coach with Your Worth coach here with Hannah, and happy to be here. I will be more on the technical side. I will be taking care of the chat if anybody puts anything in there. We do strongly encourage to interrupt anytime for comments, questions, clarifications, or any ahas and yes are always encouraged as well. And thanks for taking the time out of your evening to be here with us. If there's anything like technical difficulties, feel free to interrupt with that as well, and we will help to get you guys going and be here centered and connected with us. Hannah will be our presenter, and I will give the floor to her now. Thanks, Hannah.
Thank you, Whitney. Let's go. Let's just jump right in. So today we're talking about mental shortcuts. I just like this picture an awful lot. It says, on the road to shortcuts. On the road to success, there are no shortcuts. And they've clearly taken a shortcut.
Oh gosh.
So first, let's talk a little bit about what the heck is financial wellness, right? We use the term financial wellness, not just financial literacy, but what does that actually mean? So that means we respect that every part of your life touches your finances, and your finances touch every part of your life. That's the holistic piece of this. And that financial literacy all by itself just isn't enough. Like if that worked, we'd all be fine. And Whitney and I would be out of a job. And that might not be a bad thing. Got some good job security going on here. We must grow resilience, trust in ourselves, and awareness of our decisions without shame. Holistic financial wellness means that it must be trauma informed, which doesn't mean trauma focused, but it means that it must be collaborative and client centered as well. You will learn pretty quickly, if you haven't been on a slide deck with me before, that I very often deviate away from the slides, get lost, and then remind myself that I need to stick to my slides. So if I get lost, don't worry about it. I will come back again. It's just hang in there with me. So financial literacy, financial wellness kind of sits on a spectrum, especially the holistic kind of financial wellness. On one end is financial literacy. So that's the terminology. That's knowing the difference between a stock and a bond and understanding how investing works. For example, that's not comprehensive. And that all of that is Googleable. Knowing the difference between a stock and a bond has never changed anybody's life. It is not what it is for. But on the other end of the spectrum, we've got those soft skills, so problem solving, decision making, and how we get to where we actually want to be. So that's the implementation and integration piece of things. To do something like make a budget, stick to it, you kind of need everything. You need the whole darn spectrum of things. And over here on the green arrow is where we are tonight. So we're going to be talking firmly in the soft skills side of things. We won't be talking about dollar amounts at all, which is wonderful. You will not be asked to share anything. So we're just going to be talking about soft skills. Oh, there's a couple more budgeting. So our objectives tonight is for us to deeply understand why our brains use 5 common mental shortcuts, or also called biases or cognitive or logical fallacies. Sometimes there are more than these 5. We're just going to talk about 5 that we see kind of a lot. And we'll discuss the impacts of those shortcuts on our finances, and then learn at least one. For every one of these mental shortcuts, we're going to learn at least one tool or strategy to counteract that shortcut. So first you need to know, logical fallacies, cognitive biases, mental shortcuts, heuristics are not a choice, and they're not a personality defect. It sometimes can feel like, why does my brain keep doing this? What's wrong with me? Now there's not a thing wrong with you. Your brain, my brain, our brains are fantastically busy kind of all the time. And so our brains will seek out and find shortcuts to conserve energy. Very normal kind of behavior. Expecting yourself to magically turn off these cognitive biases and logical fallacies is unrealistic. And if that was actually going to work, you probably would have figured that out by now. Am I going too fast, too slow, or doing okay? Okay,
Doing okay.
thank you. Thanks. So let's talk about our first one. So here we've got a gas station. Oops. So let's say you own a gas station, and it's a successful, thriving gas station, and you're thinking about opening up a gas station the next town over. You pay a market research company $50,000 to determine whether or not that's a good idea. And the market research company comes back and says, nope, not a good idea. Don't open the gas station. Would you open up that gas station just long enough to recover the $50,000 you spent on the market research?
No.
No, it doesn't make any sense, right? That $50,000 had a job to do, and it did its job. Um, let's think about another scenario. So you go to your favorite smoothie place and you pay $8 for the same smoothie you get every single time. You drive away with your smoothie and you start to drink it and you realize that the smoothie is nasty. It's not going to hurt you. It's not going to make you sick, but it's really gross. You can't return it in this scenario. Do you continue to drink that smoothie because you spent that $8 on
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, great buck.
it?
I'll be grimacing the whole time, but I paid $8.
Choking it down. Good. One more. So there's a fancy new restaurant in town that you've heard about, and it's set up a little bit different. Super fancy, super stylish. Food is fantastic, but you pay at the door. So you walk in the door, you pay them everything, including gratuity. You pay them everything, and you cannot take any food out with you. And every course that you have is more delicious than the last one. It's like you're getting so stinking full that by the time that big piece of chocolate cake comes out, you're like, if I eat one piece of that chocolate cake, did you say something, Mom?
No.
Okay. And if you eat one piece of chocolate cake, you're like, I'm going to reverse this. Lunch, dinner will be reversed. You've already paid the price for it. You can't take anything with you. Do you eat even one bite of that chocolate cake?
No.
I probably would. You understand about chocolate, yeah.
You don't push it, right? So all of these are examples of something called the sunk cost. So this is not, we're not quite at a logical fallacy yet. A sunk cost is not a good or a bad thing. Oh, we're just going to do all of them at once, apparently. So a sunk cost is an unrecoverable cost. Paid that price, you can't recover that money again. When we talk about that in terms of a business, like we're all very comfortable with that's the cost of doing business, like that paying the $50,000 to the market research. It had a job to do. It did its job. We're not going to be able to recover that. And certainly we're not going to be able to make a return off of that. So sunk costs most often refer to monetary costs, but should also include time expenditures and energy and effort expenditures, right? Like we expend a lot of our time and energy in lots of other parts of our lives. We do this with jobs and relationships. And we sink a lot of time, energy, and money into things. Then that if it's a sunk cost, we're just not going to get a return. Not necessarily a good or a bad thing. It's just a thing that happens in our world. To change this into a fallacy, we need to kind of add on to that sunk cost. So if we're using the sunk cost, like when we're listening, we will hear people say, I've already invested so much into this. Kind of, it has to be worth something. I've already put so much energy into this, right? Well, I paid for it, so I'm keeping it. I paid for it, so I'm using it. I paid for it, so I'm eating it, right? Right? And I'm going to get my money's worth, right? These are all indicators of the sunk cost fallacy. So breaking it down a little further, the sunk cost fallacy, not the sunk cost itself, is sunk cost fallacy. This is the technical definition, which makes a marginal amount of sense to my brain, is the continuation of a behavior or action only because of the previously, quote unquote, invested time, energy, or money. And we're using investment with the heavy air quotes here. This is our brain's attempt at mitigating losses, right? We are a loss averse species. There's good reason for that. But the reason that we do that is we want to extract every little bit of value out of that, whatever that is, so that we can at least avoid or mitigate some of the losses that we took. Unfortunately, that means they are conflating the value of something with its price. The value of a choice, a decision, a thing, a relationship, a job, the value of that thing is not the price that you paid for it. And when we conflate those two things, that is when we are subject to the sunk cost fallacy. I tell a story about a young man that I worked with very early on, and I was trying to kind of get through to him the sunk cost fallacy, and it wasn't latching. He was like a super young guy. And I said, okay, t-shirt factory. 2 t-shirts come down the line. They were made right next to each other. One of them cost $50. One of them cost $200. Which one do you buy? Can you guess which one he said?
You're muted, Ariana.
I was gonna guess the $50 shirt.
He said he wanted to buy the $200 one.
Yeah.
Because he would know it's worth more. So that's exactly what this is. The sunk cost fallacy is conflating the value, its purpose, what it can provide to you with the price that you paid for it. Those are 2 separate things. This single-minded continuation of a plan of action, and this doesn't consider other risks, right? Other things that could go along with it, like drinking a smoothie that's super nasty, or throwing good money after bad is I think probably the way my grandparents would say this. So what questions do you, we're going to move on, and I'm worried that I'm going to move too quickly, but I mean, we don't have to cover all 5 if there's conversation to be had. What questions or what thoughts do you have about sunk cost fallacy? Nobody here does this, right? Simon, keep going.
I understand the concept, and I see how a lot of brands, they'll actually use that psychology to kind of promote their brand, like a Birkin bag or Lord was it Christian Dior or whatever.
You've already devoted so much time to this.
Right, yeah. And it's like, well, it's an exclusive item. You can't have it. Well, now you want it more. So they use that psychology to jack up the price. And I mean, that goes across the board, no matter what economic stature you have.
So this right here, that conflates the value of something, the purpose of something with its price. That's how we're going to kind of undo the sunk cost fallacy. That element of it is our way in. So how to counteract the sunk cost fallacy? 1, be aware that it's there. You're going to get real sick of seeing be aware of it. Awareness of these fallacies, biases, that kind of a thing, does a fine job of disrupting those patterns in our head without any other correction needed. So just being aware, like, I'm doing the sunk cost fallacy, just like Anna said. If you hear yourself say, by God, I paid money for that, so I'm going to keep it, right? Just being aware that your brain is doing this is a fine way to interrupt it. So finding a different way to assess the value of this choice, and this could be financial or it could be literally anything else. So how else can we assess the value, the purpose, or what that choice is going to provide to you? And that is this question. It's one of my favorite questions. I talk about this when I'm working with clients when we're talking about spending, but also like I do this all the time. Like, what is the purpose of my Toyota right now? Not much. So what is the purpose of this, right? This could apply to a lot of things. What is the purpose of watching 2 hours of Netflix tonight? What is the purpose of wearing the blue shirt? What is the purpose of going out to eat? What is the purpose of buying groceries? If you get comfortable with asking yourself, what is the purpose of this? What is the purpose of this? What is the purpose of this? You're teaching your brain to kind of separate those two things. If like we're looking at t-shirts and I say, what is the purpose of this? The purpose of this is not like, so I can spend $200. That's not, right? For that young man, the purpose of knowing that he spent $200 on a t-shirt is kind of a signal for him. Like, I'm successful. I know that I'm successful. There is always a purpose to every behavior that we do, financial or otherwise. We just might not always have full clarity on it. And what's the purpose of this? Does a fantastic job of evaluating the choice at hand, not you. This is a consistent theme in the work that Whitney and I do, is that we do not evaluate you. We evaluate this choice, this system, this budget. What is the purpose of this? And the other suggestion for undermining the sunk cost fallacy is to fold some risk assessment into your decision making. Like, how could this choice, what are the potential risks associated with this? You don't need to spiral. I have anxiety and have since I was very, very little. My brain is fantastic at risk assessment. But, if we end up kind of catastrophizing, we're not really risk assessing anymore, but folding a little element of a risk assessment into this. Like, so if I'm asking, what is the purpose of watching Netflix for 2 hours tonight? I could also be asking, what are some risks associated with Netflix for 2 hours? What questions do you have before we move on? Let's do some reflections specifically for the sunk cost fallacy. So what do you think as you begin assessing the purpose of choices, the choices that you make?
Change habits.
Yeah, change habits without correcting yourself, right? There's no punishment that needs to happen here if all you're doing is just changing the routines and habits that you have, teaching your brain how to see things slightly differently. What do you think you'll notice as you begin assessing possible risks of the choices you make? And do you think it will be easier or hard to find other ways to do things? And we're not looking for better ways. We're going to drill down on this in a minute. But I didn't hear who was talking.
No comment.
Okay, let's move on. So this is me. As you all know, just by looking at this picture, just knowing me, I'm a little bitty round person, right? I carried drums a lot, middle school, high school, and some after school. And this was me not too long ago, pre-pandemic, in my late 40s, carrying a drum that's about the weight of a neutron star. It looks like I'm smiling here. I am not smiling.
No.
And I believe this was before the parade started. I believe this is the one where you picked up Daisy, Mom.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was
You
gruesome.
took a deeply unflattering picture of me. Thank you for that, by the way. If anybody wants any blackmail, my mom has it ready to go, by the way.
Yeah.
You just have to ask her. She'll
I've got
send
a file.
it to you. Yeah. So let's go back. So at the end of this parade, I was completely blown, just completely exhausted. Everything went wrong that could go wrong. I ended up carrying that drum for probably an hour total with no water. And I get back to my car and realize that I had not left any water for myself in the car. We determined that if I'm going to make it home, the 20-minute drive home, I need to get some water. So I pull over to a convenience store. I walk over to the refrigerated section of that convenience store and I grab this bottle of water. So here's kind of some of the things that people can say to themselves. I need water to live, therefore I need this bottle of water. Another one would be, I worked really hard, so therefore I need this bottle of water. So there's lots of justifications that I can tell myself that I need this bottle of water. So what we're using is the classic wants versus needs strategy, which I'll tell you right now is absolutely garbage and you can throw this away. The wants versus needs does not work, and we'll talk about why. It's not working. Yes, I should just read the slides. Yes, it's way too easy to rationalize stuff to ourselves, right? That's what I'm doing. Like, I worked really hard. Does it matter if I deserve the bottle of water? Not really, right? I always deserve a bottle of bubbly water. Thank you. I mean, I haven't done hardly anything today. I just went and got a massage, right? I still think I should have deserved a bottle of water. My worth, my value, how hard I worked is not in question. What we're evaluating here is not Hannah, but the bottle of water, right? We're evaluating the choice. Wants versus needs is lightning fast. All I have to do is check that needs box and I am on my way. Right? It's very fast. It is inconsistent, especially for like making decisions in partnership or around somebody else. What you think is a want, I think might be a need, and vice versa, which means that we not only get inconsistent feedback, but we're going to have conflict as well. Wants versus needs is not even useful if we look back in time, because we're like, oh, I thought that was actually a need. It turns out that was actually a want, or vice versa, right? So we have inconsistent feedback coming back to us from using this tool. Wants versus needs is deeply emotional. And if you're like me, you have been told many times in your life, not necessarily by your mom, who is watching me right now, that like this is the logical way to make decisions, right? Well, it's actually super emotional. In fact, it's difficult to think of two words in the English language that are more emotional than wants and needs. So we're kind of told that this is the logical way to make decisions when what we are doing is making deeply emotional decisions. And it is a setup for failure, regret, shame. That's what happens. Like, ugh, I'm so bad at wants versus needs. And I have had people tell me, Hannah, how do you define wants versus needs? I'm like, I don't. It's a garbage tool, throw it out. Like, you need to do something better with that decision. What you need during a crisis, during apathy, during a hot state may not actually serve you long term. So let's talk about the values. Like, what is the purpose of this? What are some values of this bottle of water? So in your imagination, stand there with me in the convenience store. I'm still fully kilted out, but I've got sweat rolling down my back and my hair's all sticky uppy. I mean, more than my hair's always sticky uppy, right? And I'm completely exhausted. I'm holding a bottle of ice cold bubbly water in my hand. So what are some purposes of this bottle of water? It's yummy. I like bubbly water. For someone who doesn't like bubbly water, those are called wrong people. For someone who doesn't like bubbly water, that's not a value, right? It's not serving a purpose to them. So it's yummy. It's going to hydrate me.
Yeah.
Go ahead, keep talking. What else? What are some other values of this? Go ahead.
Life sustaining. Yummy, hydration, refreshing. It's life sustaining. If it's flavored bubbly water, it's going to taste good.
A good alternative to Coca-Cola.
Oh, yummy. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Yeah, it's healthier than me drinking a liter of cola. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other values we can think of for this bottle of water?
Think of anything else.
So the value of a choice, any choice that you make, is its service to you. What is it going to provide to you? Again, we're not evaluating how hard Hannah worked. No, not. It's not on the table. We know Hannah worked hard. And now we're going to assess the possible risks of this bottle of water. And this, I could spend all day on this because I am a risk assessing machine, but we're not going to spend too long. So one risk is that it cost me $3, let's just say. And that is related to something called the opportunity cost.
Thought
So,
gonna
huh?
include price. Or was that
Yes.
just on the, okay,
Including the price that we paid, time, energy, and money, needs
okay.
to be considered as part of the risk, not part of the values, like we talked about, because then we're avoiding that sunk cost fallacy. So we've been studying a lot macroeconomics, and you can almost like feel the other coaches' eye rolls because I said macroeconomics. Whitney's doing a good job of keeping it together. Macroeconomics, this is a term from macroeconomics, is this opportunity cost. The opportunity cost is the return on the option you didn't take minus the return on the option that you chose. Did that make perfect sense to everybody? No, because that only makes sense if you're an economist. I'm sorry. No, he said yes, it made sense to me. It does not make sense to the rest of us. So this is how we choose to think about opportunity cost. What did I have to give up for this, right? So if that bottle of water costs me $3, I can't spend that same $3 twice. I can't spend it on water and also on gas or sandwiches, right? What did I have to give up? I had to give up $3 worth of gas or sandwiches or any number of so many things that I had to give up to make this choice. So if I buy the bottled water, I can't buy gas. I should just stick to the slides. Yep, just go with the slides. So opportunity cost in like the normal people world just applies to the dollar amount, but we also need to apply it to our energy, our efforts, and also our time, right? So I can't, it took me some little amount of time to make that $3. Even if I'd found $3 laying on the ground, I would have needed to bend over and pick up that $3, which would have taken a tiny little bit of time and energy. And I'm not going to get that back again either. We can always make more money. We can always make more energy. I can have a snack and take a nap, but we cannot make more time. So I think that very often we tend to assess things, the value of things in terms of money, but the money cost, monetary cost, but we don't spend a lot of time understanding or taking into account the time cost of things as well. All right, so back to our risks or potential risks of this bottle of water. $3, but we're going to just kind of generalize that, say opportunity cost, time, energy. So it could be flat, it could taste bad. What are some other potential risks you could think about this bottle of water? Oh, sorry. Oops, oh. Just kidding. What else do you think? Continue to.
If you did get like a bottle of water rather than bubbly water, you have to think about the environmental cost. Plastic.
Can use something with that bottle. Absolutely. It could be sick, could make me sick. Again, I have anxiety, so my brain is very helpful. It always tells me that things are full of poison. It's very handy. My brain is always keeping me alive by telling me that things are full of poison. And every body of water I've been in since I was probably in 3rd grade, my brain has told me that there's a shark in there.
Yep.
So it's just always behind me. Super helpful that our risk assessing brains will do this to us. What are some other potential risks? And it's okay to get weird with this.
I might choke on it.
Mhm.
Oh, there's that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Didn't think of that one.
Could drop
You
it
could-
and immediately dump it. Go ahead.
That's exactly what I was gonna say.
Absolutely. Right. So we did our value assessment. We did our risk assessment. Our third assessment, is there any other way? Is there any other way to get some or all of the values without some or all of the risks? And sometimes there's not another way. And we are not, I need to make this super clear, looking for better ways. We are only looking for other ways. So what are some other ways to get some or all of the values without some or all of the risks?
You drink it out of a hose.
Yeah, and good old Gen X over here. We absolutely could drink it out of a husband. I am not afraid of that. The whole
I don't.
generation of us weirdos.
Never
What
heard
else? What are
of it.
some what are some other ways?
Ask
You could
someone.
ask. Mhm.
Ask someone for a paper cup of water.
I could risk it.
Drive through.
Go through a drive-through. Yeah,
True, yeah,
I could steal it.
that's true. You could.
See what I wrote down. Find a drinking fountain.
Yeah,
That's actually what happened. As I did this actually happened when I took 3 whole seconds, put my head in the swivel looking for other ways, and over in the corner of the convenience store, there was a drinking fountain, one of the big ones with the the big refrigerated units underneath it.
oh, lovely. Okay.
So that's what happens when we find other ways. Is sometimes we find other options and sometimes we don't. It kind of doesn't matter if we actually find other ways. What matters is that we are teaching our brains to look for other ways rather than getting stuck. So let's talk about mental shortcut number 2, and that's planned continuation bias. I'm going to explain it. I don't expect you to just know what that is, unless you're with me. So indicators that we're listening for if someone's using planned continuation bias is we say things like, well, I started it, so I'm going to finish it no matter what. I said I was going to do it, and I'm going to do it. Stick to the slides. I'm no quitter. My mama didn't raise no quitter. And I just have to keep pushing through, right? So that's sort of like boom, 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 boom. That sort of nonstop sort of pressure to start what we finish. And here we've got more single-minded continuation of a plan of action without considering. We've heard this before, right? This was also deeply built into sunk cost fallacy too. Single-minded continuation of a plan of action without considering other potential risks. So plan continuation bias, the purpose of it, the reason we do it is that we are trying to kind of do things the right way. The way that we set out, the structure, the plan, we're trying to keep with the original plan. And as we get closer to our destination, this bias gets more and more pronounced. So we kind of get that tunnel vision, right? I just got to get there.
Yeah.
And that looks like doubling down. So we will do that pretty readily. And we're fast. So this results in inflexibility, tunnel vision, and hyper focus, which is just a kind of avoidance. And I want to get failure opportunities galore because, and I'll explain myself a little bit here in a minute. Try to stick to the slide like I said I was going to. So how to counteract the plan continuation bias is, can you guess what it is? Let's be aware of it. That's the first one. Let's be aware of it. Be aware that your brain, like all of our brains, has a tendency to want to stick to the original plan. And sure, that sometimes has kept us on the original plan when we otherwise would have dipped, but sometimes it keeps us going when we should have dipped. So we're going to be practicing scenarios, pre and post-mortem training. So in the aviation world, they call plan continuation bias get there-itis. I just have to get there. I just have to get there. I just have to get there. So let's say you're an airline pilot, right? Flying your little airplane, you've set out your plan. I'm going to go from point A to point B. And as you fly, things start to change, right? The weather is now nonsense. You've got instrumentation on board that's not working. Someone on board is out of order, right? Somebody is sick. I couldn't find a good picture that I liked of people being sick. So we're just going to stick with that one. So plan continuation bias, and this says like, I just got to get there. I just got to get there. I just got to get there. I said I was going to go this path, so I'm going that path. I just have to keep pushing through, right? And that's how airplanes get flown into the sides of mountains, right? So there's two options here. Let's say we deviated and we landed safely at an airport. That could be perceived as failure because I didn't stick to my original plan. That's one option. The other option is I keep going, keep pushing through, and fly my airplane into the side of a mountain. That could also be interpreted as failure, pretty obviously. So to counteract plan continuation bias, we practice something called the worst case scenario. And this is not, these are bummers, right? So the idea is like, before I head out, here's my saying, what could I do to prevent that from happening? What's the worst possible things that could happen? Well, the weather could turn to nonsense, right? How could I prevent that from happening? Can't. I can't prevent the weather. I could choose a different route if I think that the weather might be. That's what I could do to prevent like interacting with the bad weather. Let's say the worst thing that could happen was that my instrumentation goes out. What could I prevent? How could I prevent that from happening? I could, I don't know, take good care of my equipment and check everything 3 times.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah. Let's say someone on board is the worst case scenario, somebody gets sick on board. What can I do to prevent that from happening? Run COVID tests on everybody before they get on. Make sure that there's somebody on board that can help if somebody does get sick. All sorts of things that I could do to prevent the worst case scenario from happening. This is called pre-mortem. And then the second thing that we could do is we could go post-mortem, which is where we've all the bad things have happened, right? And we can ask ourselves after the fact, what went wrong, right? So we can, I'm sure you've seen in the movies where like there's been a airline crash and they gather all the pieces that they can and they lay them out carefully in a hangar and they're asking the question, what went wrong, right? And they use that information to make airplanes safer, right? So what went wrong? Let's say the weather went wrong. Okay, well, next time, that we're making the assumption that we lived through it. Next time, like I could make sure that I have better equipment so I can move around. I could fly around. I have extra gas or whatever. What went wrong? The instrumentation went wrong. What can I do to prevent that next time? It would be, like we talked about, making sure everything is up to date, and then maybe just don't transport humans anymore. I don't know. So how to counteract plan continuation bias? You know this one already. Be aware of it and practice those scenario trainings before and after, pre-mortem and post-mortem. Yeah, worst case scenario for prevention, post-mortem for recovery. Really, when we're talking about tools in our world, we're talking about tools kind of falling into two categories, prevention and recovery, although some can do both, right? So if you find something that's a prevention step and a recovery step, beautiful. And again, you're going to get sick of me here saying this too. We are not evaluating the system. I'm sorry. I should just read the slide. We are evaluating the system, strategy, or plan, not whether or not you did it right? And there again, for plan continuation bias, that keeps the focus on the plan that we're using. Because what was maybe once a really lovely plan can end up being a really horrible plan because conditions change, right? Internal and external things change. I know we are all old enough now that we have probably lived through it a couple of times in our lives, like, that is not where I thought I was going to be right now. That's plan continuation bias. I thought it was going to be this, and now it looks like this. And it can feel like a failure, and it is absolutely not a failure. Here we go. Yeah, wait, slides. Evaluate the system or plan, not yourself. Building, iterating, and evaluating adaptive strategies and plans take self-acceptance, experimentation, intentionality, and perspective. You cannot do any of those things if you are judging yourself. All right, so reflections on plan continuation bias. What do you think you'll notice as you begin observing? If you're looking for plan continuation bias, what do you think you'll notice?
You might notice a pattern since we're the one in the middle of all this, individually, we could have some sort of a predilection toward one type of solving the problem or another.
Yep.
And getting ourselves into situations.
Yep. Yeah. As long as you can recognize that pattern without judging yourself for that. I am talking directly to your brain, Mother.
Yes, I know you are. Trusted advisors, just noticing if you find a pattern in yourself.
I would say listening to your self-talk. How
Yeah.
are you speaking to yourself? Are you saying I have to?
A lot of obligation in there. I'm so proud of myself because that's like, so what kind of patterns do you think you'll notice? And you don't have to divulge this. This is not something like, this is kind of like predicting. What kind of patterns do you think you'll notice? Predictable kind of things. And again, once you notice a pattern, really all you have to do is interrupt that pattern. Do you think it will be hard to do the pre-mortem and post-mortem scenarios? For the most part, yeah. Mom?
Oh, yeah.
I think it'll be difficult either pre or post, is because we tend to be resistant to change, and if we're noticing a pattern and we're trying to interrupt that pattern, that's a change.
It is.
Yeah, it's hard.
It's hard. Our brains do not like that. consistency, even if it's not healthy, looks like safety to our brains. And we will try to crawl ourselves back to that, even if it wasn't healthy for us to begin with. All right, next one. Let's keep going. So you're driving along, enjoying your drive, and all of a sudden traffic starts to back up. Traffic is really backed up. And you think to yourself, I'm gonna honk my horn. And your horn says, frickin' do it. Frickin' honk your horn. And so you do it. You honk your horn. Right? Look at that too, right? So that's kind of the absolute, if you can think of that level of frustration, that's action bias. And when we're listening for action bias, here's what we hear. Well, I got to do something. Can't just sit here. I don't have any other choice. Can't just sit there and take this. I got to do something, right? Honk. Right. That's action bias. So there was a time when my sign said, don't just do something, stand there.
Yeah.
And that was counteracting action bias. I had a client, I went through, like, I got passed around through nurses, emergency room nurses. I got passed around quite a bit about 3 years ago. And they said that one of the things they taught, one of the things they say in the ER is don't just do something, stand there. You know, like, imagine being like in an emergency room suite and everybody's got 6 jobs to do and everybody's doing something. And somebody comes busting in that door and just starts to jump right in and help. Right? They're probably going to make things worse. So what they talk about is like, stand there for a second, take a breath, get your situational awareness on. Don't just jump in. Right? That's that action bias. I have to do something. So it is favoring action over inaction. And again, it's probably kept us doing stuff when we otherwise would have stopped. And it is an attempt to motivate us, propel us, and it can be useful. But the fact that it's called a bias means that it's a default mode in our heads. It can also be a response to us feeling out of control and feeling our own reduced choices. Whitney and I, we were at our training all together as a group, and there's an instinct that we talk about a lot in our world called the righting reflex. And this is an example of that we just want to jump in there and help. We just got to fix some stuff. And that may not be the right choice because it's super, super, super reactive. And that will result in our own impulsivity, hot states, crisis, panic, all of that stuff. Basically, our brain's turning off. And it reinforces that we have no other choices, which is ironic because it is a result of us feeling like we don't have choice, right? So that's what can also be a response to feeling like we're out of control, but then it reinforces that we're out of control, right? So it just feeds itself, right? It gets stuck in action bias. And there are people, I'm sure people in your life that you know that cannot stop. They're constantly fixing, solving, doing something, but they can't rest. So how do we counteract action bias? I'm sure you saw that one coming, right? We're going to practice something called an option inventory. We did one. We already did an option inventory. At the end of values, risks, and any other way was, is there any other way? And again, not by looking for better ways, but only other ways. We teach our brains to look for other options, keeping our heads on a swivel, so to speak. So this is a prevention practice. Teaching our brains how to look for other options doesn't really help us in the moment of action bias, but it can help to prevent it. And it does take, my favorite word, practice. And we are training the brain to seek other options. Because if your brain is looking for other options, guess what it's going to see? It's going to see other options. If your brain is thinking like, I don't have any other choices, I'll shut it in. You're not looking for other choices. You will not see them. It's not a personality defect. You just can't. It is critical that doing the option inventory not be perceived as a to-do list. Keep the stress on this very, very low. So This is important. This is incredibly important. This is a tactical choice to keep this from becoming a to-do list. You need to get weird with it. The weirder you get with your option inventories, the better it works. So if I'm like looking for another way besides this bottle of water, I could be like, it's Oregon and the valley, which means that I'm never too far away from a body of water, like a ditch. So maybe the another way would be laying down in a ditch and drinking ditch water, or drinking water out of the back of the toilet, or from the bowl of the toilet. Get weird. The weirder you can make this, the better this works, because we don't want this to become a list of obligations. I think that you probably are pretty good at getting weird. The weirder you get, the better.
The sink's
So
a good
here's-
option too, Hannah.
The sink's a good option too. In a gas station, in a plaid pantry, I don't know. I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
not a good option, but it
I
is
go
an
for sink
option.
over the toilet tank.
I would
Or the
absolutely
bowl.
do. Yeah.
Yeah,
Don't know
yeah.
what's going on in there. Yeah. But again, these are all choices, right? They are all
Right.
options that we actually have. So here's action bias. Well, I've got to do something. I don't have any other choice. I can't just sit here and take this. And then the other part of your brain, well, okay, what's the silliest thing you can do? Right? What is the silliest thing you could have done? Right? So we're leveraging this silliness to crack into our brains. And then but this is a conversation between you and you, but this is absolutely conversations we have with our clients too.
In the
Let's see how-
traffic jam situation, you could get out and run around your car.
That's absolutely. And depending on what part of the state you're in, that might not even be super weird. Yeah, you might have to even get a little bit weirder.
Yeah.
Strip naked and run around. I mean, don't do that. Don't do crimes.
No.
And especially don't tell me about that before or after you do crimes.
Yeah.
So yes, what we're talking about is silly option inventory, making it weird. We're not looking for better ideas, just different ones. And this is, well, I'm beating this horse too. You might not do any of those silly things, but you're just getting your brain comfortable with seeking those other options. Although occasionally our brains will come up with something super weird, and then you are allowed to I think I might actually go do that. I think I might actually get up and run around and
Yeah,
knock yourself out.
yeah.
It's not off the table. Just because your brain thinks it up and it's weird doesn't mean you don't need to not do it. Again, don't tell me about it before or after if it's parts. Looking for other options, not better options, is hard. So give yourself some grace. We live in a society and a culture that is heavily productivity. We have a fetish for productivity. And this can sometimes feel like I don't have permission to be silly. I need to take things seriously. But really, silliness play is an actual strategy. Doesn't seem like it, but it absolutely is. You're making space between the impetus to do something and the doing of the thing. So here's the do it. So the impulse to do the thing and the doing of the thing, that's a very small space. And once it's gone, we do not get it back again. Action bias slams that closed. I'm pretty proud of myself for this animation. I just like to point that out. It's pretty good considering what I'm working with. Crisis slams it shut, but so does action bias. So the more distance you can get between the impulse to do a thing and the doing of the thing, the better our decisions tend to be. So silliness means that we are looking for options, and that interrupts crisis and slows down our decision making. Am I talking about taking 45 minutes to make a decision on a bottle of water? No. I'm talking taking that quarter of a second decision to buy that bottle of water to a 2-second decision. That's already quadruple, right? We've already given our brains so much more space. And your brain is so incredibly fast that it doesn't need to be too much. Any amount of slowness we can impart in our decision making results in better decision making. Does that mean every decision we make is great? Just we're increasing the likelihood. So reflections on action bias. What do you think you'll notice as you look for silly options? I don't know. You might notice something kind of amazing, like having the instinct and the impulse to cut your hair off in 3 o'clock in the morning, and it turns out fantastic.
I was gonna just say, maybe just some creative bout of genius.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Right? Do you think it will get easier or harder to find silly options?
Easier.
Yeah,
This is
definitely.
a skill. Especially if our brains are stressed out. This can take some time. So in general, what do you need clarification on? Anything? Which number are we on? We might not make it to all 5, y'all. That's okay. Mental shortcut number 4, magical thinking. Actually, you know what we're going to do? We're going to blast past magical thinking. We'll come back to it some other time. Come back to it later. Just pretend like this is I owe you a mental shortcut. Mental shortcut number 5, effective forecasting. And here's what this sounds like. Someday when I just have to. I really need to. So this is more of this obligation language. I just have to someday when if we could just all of those things. I just need to over and over and over. One of our coaches, who we're not going to name, but who's, she's one of my 3 favorite coaches. She's prone to effective forecasting. She's also super good at sussing it out so she can hear it. One of my favorite things that she ever said was, I just need to stop effective forecasting, which was her effective forecasting on her effective forecasting, which is just, it's freaking, that's a masterpiece, right? So this is what effective forecasting is trying to do. What we're trying to do is predict our future emotional states, specifically happiness and safety. We're trying to find that, like, all I need to do to be happy and safe is buy the Mini Cooper. Mom, I'm buying a Mini Cooper. This leverages obligation or restriction to keep us motivated. Like, I just have to. You could hear that obligation in there, that pressure. And it hides a lie. If I do X, then I'll be happy, safe, and okay. All I need to do is get a raise, and then I'll be okay. All we need to do is buy the house, and then everything is going to be great. All we need to do is get married, and then the things will be good. And all of that kind of thing. That happens over and over again, almost constantly in some of our heads. So that is making us a promise. If I do this, then I'll be happy, safe, and okay. But it's a setup, right? This is an absolute trap. I did X, Y, and Z. I got the raise, and we bought the house, and we had the baby. And I'm not happy, safe, or okay. Then the next logical thought in our heads is,
It's my fault.
it's my fault. What's wrong with me? I did everything I was supposed to do. What's wrong, right? I did everything thought I was supposed to do. And I'm still not happy. There must be something wrong with me. And there's not. There's nothing wrong with you. And all of this lie is how we undermine this. The lie is, if I do this, then I'll be happy, safe, and okay. You expect that one, right? Be aware of it. Make that, if I do this, then I'll be happy, lie bigger. Make that lie weirder. Make it goofier. And what this does is it points out to our brains that this is, in fact, a dirty, dirty lie. Get weird. You have my permission. I just need to finish this project, and then, so this is what our brains would normally say, and then everything's going to be great, right? That's the normal way that we would finish that sentence if we finished the thought in our heads, but we don't, right? But if I say, I just need to finish this project, and then the rest of my life will be perfect, what happens is our brains begin to catch on. Oh, that's kind of dumb. Hey, did you have something to add? Okay, somebody said something. Mom? Okay. So reflections on our good friend effective forecasting. So what do you think you'll notice as you begin finishing off that effective forecasting with the weirdest, silliest thing?
We trip ourselves out more than we.
Yes,
more than we should, really. Um, yeah, I've been trying to do way less of that. Um,
It's effective forecasting is a learned behavior. You picked that up from somewhere, which is means that you can pick it up. You could set that back down. But yeah, it's super, super easy for our brains to go, yeah, okay, simple. All I need to do is blankety blank. And then everything's going to be great. What kind of patterns do you think you'll notice?
I need another example because I'm not grasping this.
Oh, another example of effective forecasting.
Yeah.
Whitney, do you have one?
I think what comes to mind for me could be, um, let's say, for me, one that comes up is I just need to clean the bathrooms and then I can go for a walk. Or I just need to have my house clean and then I can have people over. I just need to have my house clean and then I can have guests. I think that's
Mhm.
one that comes up for me.
Yep. And it could be, there's a punishment reward thing that can sneak in here. Absolutely. Yeah. And Whitney's example is perfect for that. Like that's
So
like,
can I have an example of identifying with the silliness?
mhm. So let's say my brain says, God, I just need to clean the bathroom, right? And then if I hear myself saying, I just need to, right? If I've identified that there's a pattern either externally or internally in my language, I've identified the first part of effective forecasting. Like I'm making myself this promise. All I need to do is clean the bathroom. But I can finish that sentence with, and then the war in the Ukraine will be over, right? So by doing that, what we're teaching our brains that because that's kind of what we're telling our brains. All I need to do is this, and then blankety blankety blank. Typically, our brains just come up with, and then everything will be fine, and then I'll be happy, then I'll be safe. Sometimes we don't even get as far as finishing that sentence. Like it's just a pressure in our heads. And what we're trying to do is take the pressure off and be like, probably if I don't clean the bathroom, it's probably not going to be that end of the road. Like, so we're reducing that pressure. And that's why it was funny and ironic that our coach said that one time, all I need to do is stop effective forecasting, right? Because she's identified that she needs that effective forecasting is kind of kicking her in the teeth. So she's like, that's all I need to do. And she got it immediately. She picked up on it herself, right? So that's that. The counterpoint to this is just drawing, like putting a really as goofy as possible spotlight on the effective forecasting, and then our brains pick up on, okay, yeah, that kind of didn't make any sense. That's like Nahida was just saying, like our brains are super good liars, right? And so we end up with that sense of failure because I did all the things that I was supposed to do. I'm not happy. I'm not safe. You know, what's wrong with me? So this just picks that lie and turns a spotlight on it so that our brains feel like, okay, that's kind of dumb. We're getting close on time. So let me drop out of this. We are so close on time. My gosh. Hang on one second. So I have for you folks, and this would be a favor to us. And I will include this here in chat, but also put it in emails to you. Please just disregard all of the otters doing silly things to our, nope, that is where I need to pick up the car.
I didn't
Hang in
see
there with-
otters. I want otters.
Otter is the platform that we use to do audio recordings.
Okay.
Please ignore the one that says Sandy Boulevard, Wood Village. So that's that's where I pick up the car. The link underneath that is like a 4-question exit slip, basically a survey about what we talked about tonight. It's anonymous. And at the end of that, you can sign up for next month's class unless you're already signed up. I would be grateful, Whitney and I would be grateful for your feedback on that. It shouldn't take you very long. It's meant to be super simple, but I have extra time. I'm not going to kick anybody out for the next 10 minutes or so. If you have questions, if you want clarification, if you want to add on, please do this. We would please stick around as long as you have time for. Yeah. Anything that anybody need clarification on?
No, I just need to do the exit thing, and then the world will be a better, like we'll have world peace.
Exactly.
Beautiful. That was perfect. Thank you. That was absolutely beautiful. Yeah. What was your favorite thing that we talked about tonight, folks?
I need to see a list of the things again.
Okay. Okay. Our list was we talked about sunk cost fallacy. We talked about might not get them in the right order. We talked about good Lord, help me out, Whitney. Sunk
Wants
cost
versus
fallacy.
needs.
Say again.
Wants versus needs is another
Wants
one.
versus needs. Yeah.
Hmm.
Action bias. Plan continuation bias. That's it. Plan continuation bias, and then effective forecasting.
Yeah.
The one I most identify with is the continuation bias.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one hits me pretty close to the mark.
Uh-huh. Yeah. What's super interesting is that plan continuation bias, effective forecasting, and action bias do all those at the same time. They're best
Mhm.
friends. Yeah, all of them wrapped up together. Yeah. What else resonated for you folks as we've been talking tonight?
Mine was plan continuation bias too, because I tend to kind of lose it. If things go completely wrong. And you're surprised to hear that. No.
I have to say, Hannah, I appreciated your PowerPoints, bringing the two together, right, between
Yes,
the
thank you.
impulse and the action, right? And so for me, what's in between there is prayer.
Okay.
Put
Yeah.
my hands together, and usually it's please don't hit me, and go ahead if it makes you feel better
Yeah.
in your
I hate it.
traffic situation.
In my traffic, yes.
Yes, I will crack people up who drive with me because I'll be like, oh, do you need in here without a blinker? Go ahead. Go
Yes,
ahead.
you're way more important
By
than
all
I am.
means, yes.
Yeah,
People are like, how are you still calm? I'm like, because I just talked
doesn't
to
matter.
them as if they're right in front of me.
Yeah.
We're all gonna get there at the same time.
Yeah.
Think
But
you're
it creates that silliness. Sorry, Nahid. It creates
no
that
worries.
silliness for me when I'm driving so that I don't get stressed out. Because after COVID, I definitely was getting stressed out. Like, how do I break out of this? And so creating that silliness of just talking to that person as if they're actually hearing what I'm saying. And my passengers are like, what is happening? But that silliness helps. So
Embrace
to
it. Yeah. What were you gonna say,
Gonna say
Naheed?
the thing that resonated is kind of ridding the whole like want versus need mentality. Um, especially since, we've had a little bit of a sabbatical with our work here. But just I feel like this is a safe space to share, but I was married last year, like February, and like my marriage basically ended by the end of the summer. And for good reason, and it was really worked out to be a blessing, but I was sort of like working through a lot of my own shames around like feeling sort of like a late joiner to the financial literacy party, and not shaming myself through a lot of the financial choices that I've made for myself to kind of like survive through stuff. And so I think I was hiding from you for a bit, Hannah, because I was shaming myself for a lot of the choices that I made, because I think a lot of my coping was also it came with spending, and I was okay with that, and okay with the fact that some of that spending was actually investing in myself, whether it was like therapy, whether it was like going to the gym, and trying to have all of those pieces. And so when you're surrounded with so much noise of like, here are all the 5 different ways you can have passive income, and this is how much money you need to have by the time you're 40. And so, I also something I also in that time of all the craziness got diagnosed with ADHD at the age of 37, which is also kind of crazy because you're like, I know, like hands up for all the, neurodivergent people. But, a lot of my life just began to make so much sense where I just thought I was like inherently flawed somehow, or I just wasn't good at things. It's like, wait, my brain has been functioning so differently for so long, and I've been overcompensating. Like, I went to law school, I did all